and welcome to Series 9, Episode 6 of In Suspense, a podcast and podcast for fans and writers of crime fiction. I feel like I almost messed that up again. The eager listeners among us will have noticed that we had a sneaky extra episode over the weekend with Sam Lloyd, who gave us some fascinating insights into his latest novel, The People Watcher, which you absolutely loved, didn't you, Leslie?
I really did, and I really enjoyed that sneaky episode with Sam. He was so lovely to talk to, and I hope a lot of people that might not have, read any of his books are encouraged to do so if they listen to that episode.
He's obviously put so much thought into his characters, doesn't he? And how the layers of them, which came across in the podcast.
He has absolutely brilliant characters. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed doing that. Yeah.
Good. And today we are chatting The Rise of Feminist Thrillers with Natali Simmonds. And I can't wait to chat to her about her novel and choosing to write in this genre. But before we move on to that, how are you, Leslie? How's your birthday and your holiday? And I believe you got a new grandchild.
Yes, a lot has happened since we last spoke, Lauren. Lovely birthday. That was really, really nice. It was so good. I had such a fabulous couple of days. I felt terribly spoilt, but that was good.
Good.
My birthday, I think, went on for about a week, but that's as it should be.
As it should be.
As it should be. Sicily was interesting.
Bit of rain.
We didn't have brilliant weather, which was a shame. So it didn't have that normal holiday vibe, We had some sun. We did have some nice days, but it wasn't as hot. It was nowhere near as hot as it's been here in England.
Oh, it's been too hot here.
It's been lovely. I've really liked it. It's so nice just being able to walk out and have your morning tea in the garden. It's so nice. But So, I mean, I can't complain. It's a first world problem, isn't it? Sicily wasn't hot enough, I mean, good grief, what am I like? But yeah.
Oh, well, so you got time to relax anyway.
Yeah, we did have and the food was incredible. I mean,
so jealous.
I love Italian food anyway, but Sicilian food is on a whole nother level. It's brilliant.
Wow.
Really spicy and Italian and gorgeous, and pasta, delicious pasta. I think if I lived in Italy or Sicily, I would be as large as a horse or a house.
No, it's the Mediterranean diet, isn't it? There's something magical about it.
Well, they say it's very healthy, but the amount of pasta I would end up eating.
Yeah, and oil and olives and garlic, yeah.
But yeah, and then, of course, while we were out there, we had our third grandchild, little girl.
Oh, lovely. That's the first girl, isn't it?
It's the first girl, yeah, Theodora Moon, which is a brilliant name, isn't it?
So beautiful. Yeah, such a beautiful name.
I mean, we knew they'd come up with something unusual because, Phoenix Heath, it was obvious they were going to not come up with a bog standard name, but I love it because it's a name to live up to, isn't it? If you're called Theodora,
I just think they're both going to be absolute superstars with those names or characters in books. I
want to have a character called Theodora Moon in one of my novels. I've decided, but then I might have to have all my grandchildren in the books because they'll think, why has Nanny chosen her and not me? So.
Got to make it fair.
What about you, Laurie? What have you been up to?
Well, I got to announce on Friday the exciting news that I have a new book coming next year with Transworld in 2024 called Clickbait. So I have been talking about this book and how I've been writing it for months and months and months on the podcast. I can finally announce it's called Clickbait and it's out in April 2024. So it's all very exciting. So we've got a book out quite soon. Well, both of us have got April next year, haven't we?
I think mine's coming out in April as well. So we will be book publication month buddies or whatever they
exactly. So yeah, really thrilled about that. And then other than that, I've just been cracking on with my next thriller and hoping, I'm looking at the date. I'm like, I was hoping to finish it by the end of this month, but I might creep into July a little bit. Like, it's like towards the end of term, suddenly they just want you in school all the time for like sports days and assemblies, and you're just take my children for the next week.
Yes.
I've moved my hair appointment 3 times and I've moved things left, right and centre, trying to fit everything in. So I'm not sure how much writing is going to get done. So we will see. But anyway.
I've got a deadline for 3rd of July for my next round of structural edits, and I'm doing them now, and they will be done in time. I'm really
Good.
enjoying the edits this time. I'm finding them. I don't know. I think because I had such a tough time last year. Now I really they're flowing. So I just hope that Imogen likes them.
Yes. Well, I think the second round, because I've just done my second round as well, we're just completely in tune, aren't we? With the same editor as well. She must have pulled her hair out. Same times for delivery, same book publication month. Poor Imogen. But I found the second round so much easier because just the level of things that needed changing just felt so much more doable, and it flowed that much easier, I think.
Yes,
So yeah.
definitely.
Very nice. Right, shall we chat feminist thrillers before we get Natali on?
We shall,
We
yes.
shall. So I was thinking about it, and I thought it's great, isn't it? Because there was Bella Mackey's How to Kill Your Family, which is another feminist thriller, and there's sort of a real rise in them coming. And it made me think about what Ruth said in Writing on Trend in our podcast a couple of weeks ago. And if you haven't listened to that one, do listen, because there's some really great advice and foresight into what trends are coming. But it really occurred to me that 3 or 4 years ago, we had the Me Too campaigns and a real uprising in justifiable anger towards how women are treated on just so many levels and in so many ways. And to see now, I wonder if this is coming off the back of that. A few years has gone by, and we're all channeling some of that anger into writing these books that are quite empowering, I think.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, because there was a bit of groundswell, hasn't there? And I think that you're right. There will be more and more of these feminist thrillers coming through. Just like in 5 to 10 years, we'll see lots of books, going over the COVID thing, because it's you have time to reflect on it, don't you? But I mean,
Yes.
women have been sort of suffering oppression for centuries, haven't we? So,
Yes, that's true.
and there have been, some remarkable feminist books before. I mean, I'm thinking of, and it's not a thriller as such. It's more of a science fiction. The Power by, is it Naomi Alderman?
Oh, I've not read that
Oh
one.
yeah, I mean, so I love feminist thrillers, and I really love Natali's, and obviously we'll be talking to her about that in a little while. And it's refreshing to read a book with empowered women, isn't it? And women who
Yes.
take control and who are proactive, because I get really sick of books where women are kind of quite pathetic and vulnerable because you just think no.
Yeah, certainly. I think, yeah, it's got to move the story forward themselves, haven't they? Not just have things happen to them. And it's the
Definitely.
challenge as a writer, isn't it? To make sure that we are doing our
Yes.
bit to reflect that, I think, in our
Yeah,
characters.
to give our characters agency, and
Hmm.
and make them a bit more kick-ass, definitely.
Yes, yes, I like it.
So, shall we get Natali on straight away? And I'm sure she'll have a lot more to say on the topic than we have.
Yes, let's, because I'm sure she has. Lovely. Welcome, Natali, to In Suspense. Welcome, Natali, to In Suspense. We are so excited to have you here and talking about Good Girls Die Last. So before we dive in with the questions, would you please introduce yourself to our listeners, please?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. My name's Natali Simmonds, and I'm the author of feminist thriller Good Girls Die Last. I've actually got a copy, finally got mine hardback, which is exciting. And previous to that, I wrote as N.J. Simmonds fantasy, slightly YA fantasy romance. And I've also written as Cadis Knight with my co-writer, Jacqueline Sylvester. And that's more kind of slightly spicy paranormal romance. So yes, I've done it all.
Lovely. And Good Girls Die Last is such a page turner. I found myself racing through it, and I wondered if you could tell us what the book's about, please.
Yeah, it's a feminist thriller set during a heat wave in London, which is quite appropriate because my office is incredibly hot at the moment.
Yeah, so is mine.
I feel so sorry for anyone reading it at the moment because it's really hot. So they're probably like sweating while reading it. And it's all about Em. She's a 29-year-old, half Spanish, half English woman, a bit like me. She has to get to her very ill mother and her sister's wedding in Spain. And it would normally be fine because she's just getting a plane from City Airport. And then a heat wave strikes London, and it's like 41 degrees, absolutely ridiculous temperatures. London transport grinds to a halt, and she has to walk, which would normally be okay. It takes 3 hours. She has enough time, except there's a serial killer on the loose.
Yes, it's a fantastic
So good.
premise. Brilliant, brilliant novel, and I absolutely loved it. It's really propulsive, and I found myself getting very tense and cross and anxious reading it. So that's testament to your writing skills,
Yeah.
Natalie. What prompted you to write this particular thriller? Was there a specific incident that inspired you, or was it something that had been sort of bubbling away in your mind for some time, sort of
Yeah.
yearning to write this kind of novel?
Well, I started writing it in 2021, and obviously enough was going on in the world at that time. And it'd been the first time we'd been able to go and see family. I've got a house in Spain. I'm half Spanish myself. My dad's there, and we were driving back. It was a big 4-day trip because we couldn't fly, and a lot of awful things were still in the news about Sarah Everard's murder and the all the horrible things that happened during her vigil. And somebody said on Twitter, we're all sick and tired of this. It's about time we had a female falling down, which is a Michael Douglas movie, the 80s movie where he's just stuck in traffic. It's a heat wave. He's in LA. And it's the smallest little things that end up making him snap and he goes bananas. And I thought, yeah, there's a lot of women out there at the moment that just on the verge of just snapping. And I wanted to show that. So I was very inspired by that movie. Also The Summer of Sam, which is about a serial killer, but it's also set during a really hot New York summer in the 70s. So I wanted to combine that suppressed female rage with this external threat in a very hot city and just have that mountain tension.
Oh, I mean, you did it so well. Those three elements come together so brilliantly. And one of the things that really stood out for me, and I think for Leslie as well, she just mentioned it, is the main character, M. She's a woman who is walked over and treated quite poorly in the opening of the novel. And as a reader, I was almost shouting at the pages at points because I was so frustrated for her. And she goes on quite a journey over the space of 24 hours, both literally and metaphorically. How easy or difficult was it to create her character? Did she come to you fully formed, or were there lots of little elements that sort of built it together?
Funnily enough, this book is the fastest book I've ever written. The
Oh,
whole thing just came to me. I mean, to some extent, I guess having a quest book because she's trying to get from A to B makes life a lot easier. You two are a thriller author, you know that when you're trying to make it span over 6 months, it gets quite complicated. But I knew it was going to be against the clock, so she just had to get from A to B, and I had to put some obstacles in her way. So I wrote the book really, really fast. I plotted it all out. It was all on post-it notes. And M, for me, she developed quite quickly because she was kind of the personification of that suppressed, repressed woman that we all have inside of us. And of course, I had a foil character with Rose, who she meets along the way, and Rose is the opposite side of us. So I kind of wanted to show, I think most women are a mixture of all. We've all had those points in our life where we've accepted stuff we shouldn't do, just for peace and quiet, just because it's an easy life, or because of social conformity, which is easier to be good because we think that we're going to get further in life by not making a fuss. And then we also have the gobby, shouty, more aggressive side of us sometimes, and that's more Rose. And I wanted to show both sides. And but yeah, she literally gets to the middle of the book and she has no choice. Her back's against the wall, and it all hell breaks loose.
yeah, fantastic. And you convey that sensation of being in a heat wave really, really well. I mean, I was wondering whether when you wrote it, were you writing it somewhere hot? You say you live in Spain sometimes. Were you writing it somewhere hot, or did you sort of, did you sort of imagine that heat? And what was it about a heat wave in particular that you thought would be a great background for this particular story? I know you
Well,
were inspired by Falling Out, but was it more than that?
yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a lot more than that, because for me, being a woman's hard, right? We all know that. And I wanted to write a book that was feminist, but not man-hating. It's not about hating men. That you can't hate half the population of the world. It was more about, well, this is what the reality is of being a woman. And I don't think there's any time that's harder for a woman than when you're hot. Because of the clothes and because of the shoes and because of the fact that we want to walk around with as few clothes as possible, but we can't go topless. We can't find somewhere to go to the toilet. We can't pee against the wall. We get much more attention, even today, where I was like, oh, I've got shoulder showing. Should I have my shoulder showing, even though I'm absolutely sweating? And you've got this constant kind of subconscious viewer of you the whole time. So I actually wanted everything about that day to be oppressive. Everything from a serial killer where it's causing the whole of London to get themselves in a state, and the heat is causing the whole of London to get, I wanted the temperature to be rising along with the mountain tension, so that it gets to a point where it's like a boiling point. And I was really inspired actually by I May Destroy You as well. Not so much the heat wave side of things, but I love Michaela Coel's writing. She's a huge inspiration to me. And I watched that series, which tackles date rape and abuse, and she comes to terms. She suddenly realizes that something awful has happened to her, and it's got a lot of dark humor in it. But she very subtly showed the rawness of being a woman. So there's a scene with Em where she starts her period. She's already chafing, she's already sweating, she can't find anywhere to wee. She's just started her period. She's in London, it's hot, and these guys are like, oh, I love,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so I wanted everything, internal and external, to be like, I've had enough.
Yeah.
So heat would be a good reason to do that. And to answer your question, Leslie, yeah, I mean, I live in Spain all summer, and I lived there for 7 years before I moved to the Netherlands, and my dad's from there. And in the summer, it reaches 46 degrees sometimes. Well, it did that summer, actually. And obviously, it was during COVID, so we all had masks on as well. Pretty incredible. So I just drew on that.
And of course, last summer, it really did reach 40 degrees in some parts of England, which was incredible.
I finished the book in January 2022. And I remember I got the deal in like April or May, and my editor's like, okay, we've got some changes. He said, first of all, let's just change the temperature, because 41's a bit post-apocalyptic, a bit Mad Max, and 30 degrees is hot enough in London, so make it like 34 if it's record breaking. And I was like, oh, okay. And then literally a few months later, it did reach 40 or 41, and I emailed him and I was like, hot enough for you? He's like, okay, change it back, because otherwise it won't be like record breaking. So yeah.
Brilliant.
I was wondering whether you felt sort of tense and hot and angry and frustrated as you were writing it, because I certainly felt that when I was reading it. I was so identifying with Em that I kind of felt all her emotions and her frustrations. I felt them viscerally. Do you think that's why you wrote it so quickly? Because you felt so angry and charged with emotion as well?
Yeah. I mean, Spanish in me, I'm probably never not full of some big emotion, but I did, and I love to write like that anyway. Even with my fantasy, I wrote this kind of swoony romance, and I wanted it to really get you like that teen angst, and I wanted to be visceral with this book. So I was really trying hard to make sure that readers were literally sweating when she's sweating, and that they were out of breath when she was out of breath, because I think that adds to the tension. And yeah, with my future thrillers as well, I'm also looking at, there are a few ideas I've got based around struggles women have, and I do try really hard to make that the readers feel how I'm feeling. And if I don't cry during a sad scene, then I know my readers won't cry, therefore I haven't done it right. And if I'm not angry while I'm writing it, then I know my readers won't feel angry. So that's really important to me.
I was so relieved when she finally took those shoes off and put her trainers on, I have to tell you.
Took her long enough.
All the way through, I was thinking, how long can I keep these clothes on her? Like, how long is it realistic? Because it was important for the plot, but she is walking around with a suitcase the whole time. It was like kind of, it's got to serve me in the storyline, but also it's got to be realistic. And she even says to Rose at some point, put the bloody flip-flops on, that's enough.
Yes, I liked that bit. So the topic today is the rise of the feminist thriller, and as you've already talked about, you've worked to get so many amazing issues into Good Girls Die Last, including sexism, female safety, immigration, family dynamics, and then the list really goes on. But I wondered, I'd love to pick your brains on what you think makes feminist thrillers so popular at the moment. Why do you think we're seeing this rise?
I just think there's a lot of frustration out there. It started in 2016, didn't it? I mean, watching Trump come into power after talking about grabbing women by the pussies, and no one cared. that was enough to make us all go, wait a minute. And then the whole Me Too movement. And then through that, we have seen over the last 5, 6, 7 years, women coming forward, women that we've always admired, that we've always thought of as successful and happy, actually saying, no, it wasn't that easy. And I mean, I do think society's changing, and I am seeing men see things from a different point of view. And for me, it was just so important to write a book where there are wonderful men in it, as well as absolute awful men. And there are awful women as well, because misogyny isn't gender-based. There are some very misogynistic women. And the same with the patriarchy also creates issues for men just as much as it does for women. So I did really want to show that. But I think there are more female readers. Statistically, there are more female readers than there are male of fiction. But so we're tapping into that. And I think women want to read thrillers where they see themselves, and also they see themselves doing something where perhaps they can't do it. But I didn't want to write a book where it was all like, in order to have equality, we need to be the same as the people that are oppressing us. And that was interesting, actually, because Good Girls Die Last has been optioned for TV, which is really, really exciting because it's not even out yet. And they said this was one of the first books they'd read that was feminist, but it wasn't saying you have to be like a man to get equality and to be heard. I think I had my husband in mind the whole time I was reading this book. Oh my God, is he going to be saying, "Geez, do you hate me?" Like all the way through. I was like, I really wanted men to read it and learn and go like, that's what it feels like to be a woman, not, oh my God, they hate us.
Yeah, and I'm glad you included that bit about her period and everything, because you don't often see that in books, and it's kind of important, isn't it? Because that's a huge part of women's lives. The hassle.
Right? Sometimes you read a book and the whole, it's an action book and it's set over 6 weeks, and you're like, is she doing that with cramps? How's she doing that? So you can't ignore that. And little things, little things like our thighs rubbing together when we're hot.
Yeah,
you've got to walk for 3 hours in 41 degrees. How can you not mention that?
Exactly. What I found really interesting is that there is a serial killer of women on the loose in this book. And although that is, a part of the story, it's actually not the main point of the story, is it? It's what's going on around that and as a result of that. Do you want to expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, originally it was just going to be Em has to walk through London and loads of horrible things are happening to her. And I thought, no, because I wanted the whole of the city to be feeling just as intimidated and watched and oppressed as she's feeling. So she's feeling it on a personal level, because everywhere she goes, there's guys and women that just getting in her way, and just, it's hard for her to be a pretty young woman walking through London in the summer. But on a bigger scale, there's somebody out there hunting women. But I didn't want this to be about her being a victim or her being hunted, because that was just obvious. How many books are there where women are the victims? I don't want us to be the victims. I'm tired of us being the victims. In fact, she turns the table and you don't know whether she's a savior or a sinner. And I wanted to ask that question as well at the end. Is she being admired for what she does? Is that a good thing, or is she just as bad? And I wanted that threat of the killer to never really go away, because if he becomes a metaphor for what it is to be constantly on the lookout as a woman for your own safety, it doesn't really go away.
It's a very, very clever idea.
It was, really clever. And another really clever thing about the book is the use of the social commentary, which is so important with feminism, because you have so many people with such different viewpoints, and it's such a diverse topic. And we often see it played out on Twitter constantly. And you do this in Good Girls Die Last with tweets from people having their opinion about Em and everything that's going on. And they capture perfectly the different voices and groups in society. Now, we know, Natali, that you love Twitter, and you're so good at it.
I'm just addicted to
I'm so in awe of you on Twitter. Was it your love of Twitter that prompted you to include tweets in the novel, or was it more the tool to show the scope of society through it?
Yeah, I mean, both. And I say Do I love it? I think I love it now because I've been on it for so long. I've curated this community of people that I really enjoy talking to, who I don't get to meet. You know, you guys I met on there, and we will meet in real life eventually. But at the moment, they're just these personalities on my phone. But I am a bit addicted to it, and I'm addicted to it because you've got this constant validation, because you end up creating kind of an echo chamber, and it makes you feel like you're part of a community, which is very primal and very instinctive as humans. But it was a really useful tool because, again, as I said, I didn't want a feminist book where I was out there being didactic and I'm like, and all men are bad and all women are good and she's done a good thing. No, I wanted to show, actually, some of these tweets, they're all right. They can all be right. That's the problem. Like, it doesn't necessarily, she does a bad thing. She's also a wonderful person. She's also helped people. She's also messed up. They're all correct.
Yeah.
And that's important to get those people's voices across. Obviously, there's a bit of a dig at the media as well, because there's comments from The Guardian, there's comments from the Daily Mail, and they're all talking about the same topic, and the heat wave and women and the serial killer, but they're doing it all from different angles. And I wanted this book to be much more a mirror of society, as opposed to me putting across my views, because in all honesty, I don't know what all my views are. They easily change, because everybody does have a good point to make, and I think there's a lot of grey areas. So yeah, it was a really useful tool. And also, she's constantly addicted to it. She needs that phone to figure out where she's going, and she won't get off Twitter, and it's running her battery down. But I thought that was also very human and very realistic.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
I think we're all a little bit addicted to Twitter, whether we admit it or not, really. And as you say, so many different opinions, and they're all right. I think because on Twitter you lose the nuance, don't you? And the greyness.
Like you say, the grey area just isn't on Twitter, is it? It's everyone's so opinionated.
You've only got that much space to say something, unless you do threads, which I do. And then I think, why don't I just write blogs? Why am I writing these 10 post threads to get my point to go out? I normally get really kind of passionate about a topic at 6 a.m. for some reason. Today's theme's me getting angry about this before I've even opened my eyes. But yeah, and I wanted that to go. And then, of course, later on, when she becomes the topic of Twitter, she starts to trend, and you got your Save M and everything. Then you start to see that side of things, and it's terrifying. And I've gone viral, not for anything like she's done, but small little posts or whatever. And when you get out of your circle, it's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, people say mean things when you go viral. I went viral on TikTok, and people were so mean. Like, I didn't read I only read a few comments, but my daughter was like, "Have you seen what this person said about you?" I was like, "No, don't."
Read the comments. I mean, I've had things from like, your children would be better off with you dead.
Oh yeah, God. It's just nasty. People are so mean. Like, wow, and I think there is that whole hiding behind a screen element, isn't there? That people do say what they would never say to you in person. I think that is the general rule that we keep telling our kids constantly. Like, if you wouldn't say it to like a room full of people, don't say it in a message, don't tweet it, don't anything it, just keep it to yourself. It's okay just to have an opinion that not everyone has to hear about.
Yeah. Well, we've got our careers to think about. So I think, okay, if I'm about to write something, am I happy for someone to screenshot it and share it in 3 years' time? Will this affect my career? Will it? Yes, it might do. I'm not going to post it. But if you're on there under some pseudonym and no picture and no one even knows it's you, they just
you can say what you like.
To vent their feelings, and most of it comes from fear.
Yeah, and jealousy, I think, as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all the same, fear, all this hatred, all this vitriol. It's just because they hate themselves or they're scared. Most people.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
And I wanted, and once you look at it like that, you're like, oh, what's hurt you?
Yeah, you're too nice. You're so nice.
No, I just don't care enough.
Now, although this is your crime thriller debut, you are not new to the writing game, are you, Natali? You've been kicking around for a little while now, haven't you?
Kicking and screaming.
Can you tell us a little about your writing journey, how it started and what you've been doing before this?
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing when I first got published. My first book came out in 2017, The Pathkeeper, which was the first book of a trilogy, because who writes their first book and then decides it's one of three. And it was signed by Accent, and the YA imprint went under. So I ended up with a book that went out, and it did all right. People really enjoyed it. We're looking forward to the second, third, and they weren't going to be published. So my first experience was one of absolute drama. So I was 9 months without a publisher. I could have self-published, but I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't have an agent. I didn't even know how agents worked. I wasn't on Twitter. I just really genuinely, it was all a big fluke. And I found a small US publisher, an independent one. They re-released it, and it got me a little bit of attraction. And actually the third book, it was shortlisted to the top 5 for the RNA Fantasy Awards. So people were reading it, but I wasn't getting anything close to the attention this book has got. And then I had a bit of a burnout actually in 2019, because I realized I was putting too many of my emotional eggs into one book basket. It was all very much like, if this series doesn't do well, that's my career over before it started. And I started to be inspired by people like Picasso and Dolly Parton and the Beatles, who were just prolific. Not every one of Dolly Parton's songs are even known, but she's written like 800 or 900 of them. Picasso produced something like 100,000 works of art, and we could probably name like 5 or 10 of them, and it doesn't matter, because it was just this creative. And I read Big Magic as well by Elizabeth Gilbert, and all these things really inspired me to just have a go. So I wrote manga, and I started co-writing with a friend of mine, Jacqueline Sylvester, and we self-published our paranormal romance, and it's just a laugh. It's smutty. It's a bisexual witch who's a private investigator, and every book she's in a different country, because Jackie and I have lived all over the world and speak lots of languages, and she's in a different country investigating different paranormals and basically shagging most of them. So like vampires in Russia and werewolves in Berlin and witches in Barcelona, and it's just so much fun, and it didn't matter, and people are loving it. We've got really good, really big fans of that series. And I also wrote 2 middle grade books with another co-author that nothing happened. They went to sub, so they went quite far with her agent, but it didn't matter, because all this time I was just building backlist of books, experience different genres. I got to make friends with authors. Agents got to hear of who I was. I got bigger and bigger on Twitter. So by the time Good Girls Die Last came to me fully formed, and I wrote it during NaNoWriMo in like 6 weeks of the first draft. I had been months planning it. It was actually a friend of mine, Emma Cooper, who read it, shouted about it on Twitter saying, "Oh, Natalie's going to start querying with this. Whichever agent gets it is so lucky." And her agent saw the tweet.
Our agent.
Oh yes, of course.
We all share the same agent, don't we? Yeah.
Yeah. So Amanda saw, and Emma Cooper's, oh wow. So our agent, the wonderful Amanda Preston from LBA, and she said to Emma, "Bloody hell, tell Natali to send it to me first." And I just spoke, I had a 5-minute chat with her. She read it really, really quickly, and I didn't even bother sending it to any other agents.
Why would you? Why would you?
I adore her, and I knew that she had the same passion for it that I did, and that was my journey. So it was a lot of kind of drowning at the beginning. But and 2 books that didn't even get me in it. So actually in total, this was Good Girls was like my 12th book that I wrote, full novel. But the only one that got me an agent, and the only one that's got anywhere close to the level of where I wanted to be as a writer. So I hope it's the beginning of something good.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in with a question, Leslie, actually, that isn't on the list. When you started writing Good Girls Die Last, when you first had the idea, did you know that it was gonna be something different, and it was gonna be something bigger and more special? Like, was that on your mind? Because when I got the idea of The Ugly Truth, it was a huge step change for me as well, with the fact it was my first hardback. And I remember having the idea and thinking, right, this is the start of something else for me. Was it the same for you, or were you just throwing words down thinking maybe this one, or did you feel it?
I knew because I had the comp. It was Promising Young Woman meets Falling Down. A woman has to battle her way through London during a heat wave, and there's a serial killer on the loose.
That's such a good hook.
And I knew that with that line, that hook, and I ran it past 3 or 4 author friends, and they all went, "Write it." And then I wrote the synopsis and I ran it past everybody, and they went, "Oh my God, keep going." And that's what actually created the new way that I write now, where I start backwards. I have the elevator pitch, then the blurb, then the synopsis, then I break it down by chapter. I use Save the Cat, so it's all kind of plotted in a very tight, that's why it's quite tight, because it's plotted a bit like a movie, it's really tight. And then, only then do I start going to the trouble of writing the linking
with
thing.
Exactly the same, Natali. It's
Yeah,
freaky
always.
how similar our processes are, apart from the Save the Cat, which I don't use. But other than that, we are completely the same.
Just
It's
can't
weird.
waste
Book
any more
first.
time.
Yeah,
I've been writing since like 2012. I was like, how many more books am I going to write? They're going to get nowhere. No, this one I want to know at every step that people are interested before I go any further. So I knew this would get me an agent because I felt like it was very marketable. And also it was quite a conscious decision to step into thrillers, because I thought, okay, that's a genre that's not as competitive as, say, YA, and YA was writing for children was becoming quite messy and quite complicated. But I was scared. I was scared to write for adults. I had some big things to say and I wasn't sure if I could pull it off. But obviously now I'm very deep into the thriller world and I love it.
I bet you are. Do you think you'll ever return to the fantasy? Will you miss writing your spicy paranormals? Will you keep that going?
I'm still doing it.
You're still doing it.
Yeah,
Good.
so
Okay.
Cadus Night books, there's still 3 more in the series to complete.
Okay.
We had a little bit of a lull because Jackie had a baby and was moving around the world and stuff. It was all a bit much. So I thought, oh, good, I'll write a book and get an agent in that time. But we're still doing it. We released one last year. We've got another one this year. And then my fantasy is N.J. Simmonds. I've been 4 years working on a fantasy book that's pretty epic. I wrote it. It was 140,000 words. I hated it. I ripped it up and started again. And Amanda's excited about that. So there will be more NJ.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's so exciting.
That's really good. And we were wondering.
I just put too much on my plate.
Don't worry. We all know how that feels.
I know you all know what it's like to write as more than one person. And
we were wondering how you find writing a feminist thriller. You've kind of answered some of that already after writing in the fantasy genre. And what advice would you give to anyone who is looking to write a feminist thriller? Any advice for aspiring feminist thriller writers out there?
I mean, funnily enough, my fantasy is pretty feminist as well. I think you can't help writing feminist stuff if you are a feminist. But I think my top piece of advice would be, understand what your definition of feminism is. Feminism isn't hating men or wanting to kill men or get revenge on men. I mean, it's just ridiculous. If anything, it should be educating the world on the inequalities that we face, from the big things to the little things, and just striving for equality, really. And I think we live in a world where it's like a very or world. You know, you get this or that. If they rise, we fall. And I see it more as an and world. You know, if men are really successful or CEOs, whatever, women can be too. Not, oh, women should be CEOs and men should be backed down. No, it's nonsense. Like, I really do believe in this whole kind of work together. And I want my books to be read by men, for them to go, oh, I never saw it from that. Okay, cool. And equally, you know, for us to recognize men as well as being emotional and vulnerable and scared and confused. I think the world is changing, and there's a big backlash going on with the likes of Andrew Tate or
oh God,
those, and they are, and he is getting to young guys who are seeing this rise of female power and feeling, instead of like, yay, women are strong and we're strong, it's like, women are strong, we're being pushed down. And that's actually not the case at all. I can't speak for every woman. That's not what I want. I love every man in my life. I wouldn't be here without the amazing men in my life. So for me, writing feminist literature is about that. It's about just holding up a mirror to the life of a woman and saying, you might not have seen it from this point of view, but this is what we struggle with. How can we all work together so that we all get a decent break out of life?
That's such an amazing answer. Yeah, wonderful.
But with murder. Someone and it doesn't have to be the men, it can also be the women, but someone does have to die. That's it. I write my scripts, I think, oh God, wait a minute, someone's got to die. Who am I going to kill?
Love it. Now, we always love to ask our guests what they've been reading recently. So have you got any feminist thrillers to recommend, and what else have you been reading at the moment that you'd like to tell us about?
The thrillers I've been reading, so I've been reading some John Mars and some Will Deans. They're not feminists, they're both written by men, but they're great thriller writers. I'm reading The Short Straw by Holly Seddon.
Mm-hmm.
A bit biased because We've been friends for a while. She used to live in the Netherlands as well, and I think she's absolutely amazing. And
we do as well, actually.
So it's really, really tense book, short story. It's about three sisters that find themselves stranded in this house in the middle of nowhere, and they have to pull a short story as to which one is going to stay with the injured sister and which one's going to go out and find help. And I still don't know which one, who's going to come off worse, the ones that are left behind or the one that's out there looking for help alone. But it's not actually feminist. But I have read two books that, I mean, it's hard to know what the definition of feminist is. For me, it's just shines a spotlight on women and what it is to be a woman. And I actually prepared. The first one, We All Want Impossible Things.
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? Yeah.
I picked it up. It's not a particularly big book. I picked it up and I didn't know anything. I love Twitter, as you know. And as soon as 3 or 4 people say I love this book, I just buy it. I don't even read the blurb. Didn't know how emotional the blurb was.
Quite sad, isn't it? Yeah.
And I wouldn't have actually picked up if I knew it was about someone, their friend dying. It was absolutely beautiful. So well written. It's about female friendship and being a mom and family and stuff. And that to me really spoke to kind of the woman inside me. And the other one, this is Ghost Girl Banana by Wiz Wharton. This is the ARC. This is the advanced reader copy, so it doesn't actually look like this in the shops. I knew this was going to be an amazing book because I used to work for Jericho Writers, and I believe she won the bursary for it, and they were talking about it even before she had an agent. And it's phenomenal. And that's also been optioned for TV. And that's about two sisters and identity and being half English, half Spanish. I could really empathize with the character who's half English, half Chinese. She goes back to Hong Kong trying to understand who she is. And you see her mum's life previously, and then you see her life and their parallels. And both those books really spoke to me, as a woman.
Amazing, great choices.
Yeah, but Holly's, I don't know what's going to happen yet, but it's very thrilling. It's a bit scary.
We've got Holly coming on, haven't we, on the podcast very soon to talk about it. So I must grab a copy of that.
I love Holly's writing.
Yeah, me too. And what have you been reading, Leslie?
Well, because I did a recent episode. We did a sneaky.
Oh gosh, yes, you did. Yeah.
I'm Lloyd. So my reading.
You've not read something in 2 days?
It's only been 2 days, and I'm also sort of, thick in my edits now. They're due in a week or so. So I'm, haven't got a huge amount of time for reading, but I can rectify an error I made in the last podcast when I said I'd ordered Demon Copperfield, and obviously what I meant to say was Demon Copperhead, which is a reimagining of the David Copperfield, which has just won the Women's Prize, the Barbara Kingsolver. So Demon Copperhead. And I've also, as I said on the previous episode, I've also finished Yellowface, which I adored. Have you read that?
I've really got that on my list. Is it good? Is it good because we work in publishing and writers, or is it good for everybody? Because that's what I'm worried about.
I think it's good for everyone. I really loved it. I thought it was very propulsive, but I'm not sure. I know what you mean. It might be that writers identify with it more and find. I mean, it's a real satire, and it's brilliant. Yeah. I listened to the Audible version, and I could not stop listening. I think
I'm going to listen to it. I think I've been a bit reluctant. I think for exactly that reason, actually, Natali, that like reading has to have some form of escapism. And when you've spent like 10 hours a day talking about writing and actually writing, to then like be listening to someone talk about writing, I don't know. I just think maybe need a break.
The voice is so good. The character
we'll give it a go. I trust you, Leslie. Yes.
I'm in London on Wednesday, and I'm so excited to hit Waterstones and buy I've got a long list of books that I'm planning on buying, because there's some books that I'm buying on, on deals on Kindle. This summer's going to be a Kindle summer because I've really got to get through my list on Kindle. But I have got some that I actually want to see on my shelf. So I always go to London every few months and just splash out. And that's on my list.
Oh, lovely. And now I'm supposed to say what I've been reading, which is not a lot. I got to read an advanced copy of my friend's book, Laura Pearson, who's written an amazing book about a theme park. And I just absolutely loved it. But then I had this massive book hangover because it was so good that I was like, I can't read anything else now. And then I've just launched myself into doing a little proofread of Clickbait. and I'm writing a thriller, and I have not been picking up a book, and I feel really awful about it. But I know I'm going on holiday in a couple of weeks, and I've got a long stack. Fiona Cummins, Amy McCulloch, I can't wait to take their books with me. So I have got some books I'm very excited to read, but nothing to add today.
Yes, I saw.
I had great things about Laura's book, actually.
Laura did a
yes.
cover reveal, didn't she, today?
She has, yes. It looks amazing.
What's
yes.
it called? Is it called?
The Last List of Mabel Beaumont. And I made a mistake and called it something else on the Blood Brothers blowout thing. I was calling it something. So I had to double check what it's called.
So it's
I got it right.
Last List of Mabel Beaumont.
Beaumont.
Yeah, no, and the cover is beautiful.
Oh, it's so beautiful, and the words inside are equally beautiful. Yes, so it's uplit, not thrillers, but I think we all read across so many genres, don't we? There's this whole, oh, you're a thriller writer, you must only read thrillers, but no, I absolutely love romances and fantasy romances. I've got into now as well, so it's great to read across the genres.
Now, obviously, we're recording this on Monday, but by the time this goes out, it will be Thursday, so it will be your publication day, Natali, and we'll be seeing you in the evening, won't we?
Happy publication day.
So happy publication day, Natali. And that's all we've got time for today, I'm sad to say, but it's been really fascinating talking to you, and we wish you enormous success with Good Girls Die Last, which is not only a fabulous book and a fabulous title, fabulous cover, fabulous interview. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I've had a blast. Thank you so much.
And in our next episode, we'll be talking to Imran Mahmood. So I cannot wait for that.
Yes, me neither. But that just leaves me with the final task of saying goodbye from Natali. Goodbye, Natali.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And goodbye from Leslie.
Bye.
And goodbye from me. Take care, everyone. Bye.